Okay, well-being. So this is a diagram I show my patients. So we're starting off with, you could say, the parameters for well-being. As a chiropractor, recognize the alignment of the spine as best that it can be. These are muscles here, the muscle tone around the spine being equally an equal tone, which allows for, these are nerves here, nerves to get out the way they should. It sets up the parameters where the body structurally is symmetrical, where legs are even in length. But we also know too, as a heart math practitioner, that if the heart's beating in its healthy variable rhythms, it allows for a field to extend from us, which can be measured now. And that field, as it extending from us, gives us a sense of well-being. There's a cushion, you could say, as well as there's the generation of a field from our heart, but also as some of us know about the generation from our endocrine system. So when things come along like trauma can influence these conditions, toxins. The world is a pretty toxic place. And our thoughts, and I'd say the most important one is our thoughts, how we think and feel about things. And when that happens, then you can say a disease state or experience happens, and including our mentality in that respect. So this is where you can say our field collapses, muscles begin to contract asymmetrically or uneven on one side. That can cause nerves to be affected and cause one leg to be short. And we can say we're just not in a well state in that state. But we want to see, now part of my work is assessing where a person's at, using blood, hair, urine, other testing to see where a person's at, and then to see what it takes in terms of balancing care for that person, in terms of their own self-care for keeping their body in balance, two, lifestyle choices, and then natural support. So ultimately is to see, to have an interest. Why do we want to be healthy? Why do we want to move from, you could say, I call it the raisin state to the sun state? Remember the commercial Sun Made Raisins? Well, here we're going to be raisins made suns. Okay. So ultimately, we are a well-being influencer. So tonight, this session, we're going to be focusing on lifestyle choices. So lifestyle choices. We're in the center of our worlds. Our posture plays a part, breathing, eating and drinking, our fitness, our rest activity balance. So let's look at these a little bit more in detail. Posture, you can say our posture relates to our attitudes and our thinking. So when we upright ourselves, it puts us in, you can say, a more commanding position internally. So looking to see how we can cultivate a great sense of posture, especially when we're not feeling well. Breathing, poise, and addressing stress. So breathing is so central for our own poise, but it's pretty central in addressing stress. Eating and drinking, real food, adequate clean hydration. Hydration is so important. And consciously eating, taking a pause, not just shoving the food in, but taking a pause as we do eat, being conscious. Fitness, movement, walking, dancing, gardening, some kind of movement at least. For sure, getting outside as much as you can. The full spectrum light actually feeds our retina, and our retina then has an influence through our pineal gland. And when we can engage that full spectrum light, it allows for our pineal to be activated, which in turn activates our pituitary gland, and then from there, all of our other glands. And then cardio, just specifically cardio exercises, posture and strength training. Personally, I do a posture exercise every morning. I hold a posture against the wall for 4 minutes, and that helps to kind of reset the tone in that respect. Strength training, now something I recommend for folks are light squats, where you lightly bend your thighs with, you can say, a rehab ball or a gym ball behind your back. And when we do that, especially in the morning, it can wake your body right up there. Stretching, contralateral movement, walking, swimming, and that's contralateral movement. That actually helps to reset the nervous system, the brain and nervous system, those type of exercises. But ultimately, for rest activity balance, to me, this is the number one factor for our health in terms of lifestyle choices. is learning more what it takes to be in a flow state. Let me explain that more. So conscious flow state. So activity, rest. What does it take to, you can say, live in this range where we're experiencing, you say, a sequence in our life. We have presence and there's a sense of ease, a flow state. Okay. But when we get anxious or we're multitasking or we're trying to get things done, so we have time later, we have a sentiment, life's a struggle, and say we're out of the flow. And then if we're not having enough activity, the boredom may set in where we might feel like something's missing, or we might not be taking on enough. The past may matter more to us, and then we might become entangled with personal and worldly matters, which drags, you can say, our energy down. So what does it do? What does it do? What do we need to do to find the container of this flow state? So it's a matter of calibrating our own energy cadence. So our presence, our flow state presence, you can say, leads to a sense of meaningfulness and geniusness. So we're in the flow state, we feel a sense of meaning, and lo and behold, insights, realizations come that before you didn't think of them, but they're just ingenious is occurring. And part of that relates to what's happening in our heart. Okay. And as our heart is oriented, there's a compass in our heart that gives us a sense of what it takes to stay in a flow state, a sense of meaning, and we learn to continue in that way, and there's a greater experience of a flow state. So let's look at it in terms of a little bit more. So struggle. Now, struggle could be, initially when we're learning, say, Carol, learning more about cooking or technology and something we know we need to do, there could be a struggle initially. Or if we get stuck in what's called beta waves, where we're trying to work it out, if we get stuck in those what's called beta brain waves, then let's see if I can get this out of the way. Then cortisol, you've heard of cortisol and norepinephrine, adrenal hormones start to kick in, which causes our body to be under more stress. Okay, but we want to find release. We want to come into what's called alpha brain waves. And when alpha brain waves are engaged, there's something called nitric oxide that occurs where it opens up our blood vessels, opens up our system, where we feel a sense of relaxation. And where we find a conscious flow in daily living, the sequence of our living moment by moment. Now, that sets the stage for flow. And flow is when we're engaging with theta and gamma waves, and dopamine and endorphins are actually secreted into our system. And that's when we're engaged in total presence activities, creativity, ingeniousness, your works of art. So Helen, with you, with cooking, like that might be right now your total presence activities, or any activity that you think of where you're totally present, but you have to make space. You have to make space to so engage in order to actually be in that total presence activity. So like things you may want to, you're so drawn to do, you've probably already had the experience, but just look to see how on a daily basis you can create space for flow where you're actually totally engaged in that activity of love, your work of art. And then time to recovery. Now, at times, we'll be in our presence activity, and then there might be a point where you need to finish that or stop before diminishing returns happens, before you overextend yourself. And that's where recovery comes in. So any time of the day, or especially during the week, is you need to engage what's called delta brain waves. And those delta brain waves allow for, you can say, your body to recover, allows for serotonin and oxytocin to be secreted into your system. And that relates to regenerative rests, relaxation, forms of endearment, hugs, touch, spiritual communion, okay, to make time. And so there's a flow cycle. So there's a flow cycle. You can say moving past, engaging in something new, feeling the struggle of that, not being stuck in it though, finding release with the sequence of living moment by moment, and then making space to engage with things we totally love to engage with, and then having recovery time, part of the flow. So flow state, eudaimonia, which is a Greek term, well-being, of well-being. Well-being is not so much an outcome or an end state as it is a process of fulfilling or realizing one's daemon or true nature. That is, of fulfilling one's virtuous potentials and living as one was inherently intended to live. And that was coined by psychologists Deci and Ryan, where they look to explore further of what actually is a state of well-being, which relates to a flow state. Okay, so let's personally consider. So what does fulfilling my virtuous potentials mean to me? So if you have a pen or something to write on and some paper, let's consider that on our own right now. And let's take a few minutes. Implementation for the evening and for the week is a habit tracking sheet. So this is a sheet I've made up for my patients, but I think it extends to what we're doing here. So my commitment to greater health, looking at how we thought healthy, how we're thinking healthy for the day, a friend to others. So Suzanne, just to get back to your comment, this is the way of seeing how we did during the day in terms of this laid out way. A friend to others like extending beyond ourselves. Again, you were here to play a part with others, like Mitch, what you were saying too, like you're being a friend to others, extending beyond yourself. Eating and drinking healthily, exercise poised and movement and posture. Okay, rest, activity, balance. So finding our flow state here and prepared for sleep. And ultimately, again, extending a healthy influence. So each night, a blank, you would look at observing your behavior to see what aspects are working and what needs your attention. A blank in any box means no, and that you're going to find a way to do them. A P in any box means that you're partly doing what the column says. A Y in any box means yes, you are doing that, and you give thanks for the greater expression of health through yourself. Mark your chart each night and consider and/or briefly write how you can be more true to your commitment to greater health and well-being. Succinctly review your evening consideration in the morning for better health today. So let's look at a bit more why to do this. So health tracking, notes from Atomic Habits by James Clear. One of the most satisfying feelings is the feeling of making progress. A habit tracker is a simple way to measure whether you did a habit, like marking an X on a calendar. Habit trackers and other visual forms of measurement can make your habits satisfying by providing clear evidence of your progress. An accountability habit contract with another or others can be used to add a social cost to any behavior. So I'd invite you to do the habit tracking sheet with me for the next 21 days. So I'm going to start that this evening, or you can start it within the next 3 days. But on the course site, you can print that out. Habits in perspective, also from Atomic Habits, a little more in this respect. The upside of habits is that we can do things without thinking. The downside is that we stop paying attention to little errors. Reflection and review is a process that allows you to remain conscious of your performance over time. Can one tiny change transform your life? It's unlikely, you would say so. But what if you made another and another and another, and at some point you will have to admit that your life transformed by one small change. So that gives a little background of why to do that tracking. And then for this next thought here is, step by step. step by step until there's a transformation actually that, that brings things into our awareness that we are experience that we never thought to experience. Okay, diamond. Joe gave me this idea for his students. He has diamond assignment. So this is my diamond assignment for you, if you so choose to do it, is observe, calibrate, and experience your conscious flow states. Remember, activity, rest, balance. So recognizing your flow state more and more, and it takes something to have the sense of what's called introception of what it is to be in a flow state. So it takes something, but to recognize when we're overamped, and then recognizing what we need to do to get back to that flow state. So when we're trying to do too much, we're pushing too much in, we're overamping, and that's secreting cortisol, those adrenal hormones, which eventually can destroy our bodies if they get to be accelerated. And then we want to see how we can tune, how we can fine tune. If we're too hyper, those strings are too hyper on the guitar, it's not going to sound to it. So we just dial back, we dial it back. And then if we're feeling underamp, what does it take to actually dial it up, to actually engage with what we feel we need to engage with in order to find that flow state? And part of the flow state is not all about rest. It's finding, again, that balance point between rest and activity, so that our heart is engaged and we're living out of a compass of actually meaningful, ingenious living. And we're sounding a tone. You can say we're sounding a tone individually, but also together. And that life is the expression of tone. That's basically the principle of chiropractic that was founded in 1895 by D.D. Palmer. And he recognized life is the expression of tone. And he related to the nervous system. If the nerves were too tight or too hyper or too strong or not enough, then there wasn't a right tone emanating from ourselves. But it lends itself to what we're considering here.